What's up everyone and welcome back to the channel. Today we are diving deep into something you think you know from movies, but the reality was so much crazier. We're talking about the American Old West. Forget the heroic cowboys and the simple gunfights at high noon. We are peeling back the curtain to look at the dark, brutal, and often terrifying punishments that were handed out on the frontier. This isn't for the faint of heart. We're going to explore what happened when you broke the law, or even just when a mob decided you did. It was a world where justice was swift, often without a trial, and the punishments were designed to be as painful and humiliating as possible. You've probably heard of some of these: hanging, lynching, tar, and feathering. But I guarantee you don't know the whole story. We're going to break down 10 of the most brutal punishments from that era. We'll look at public spectacles that drew massive crowds and the quiet, agonizing suffering that happened in makeshift prisons. This was a time of survival, and the methods used to maintain order were as harsh as the landscape itself. Make sure you're subscribed, because you are not going to want to miss what we've uncovered. Kicking off our list at number 1 is probably the most iconic punishment of the Old West, the public hanging. Now, you've seen this in movies a million times, but the reality was a whole different level of intense. Hangings weren't just about executing a criminal. They were massive public events. We're talking entire towns shutting down, with families packing picnics and traveling for miles to watch. It was part morbid entertainment, part terrifying warning to anyone else thinking of stepping out of line. The gallows would be built right in the center of town, a huge wooden structure that everyone could see from their homes and businesses. It was a constant looming reminder of the ultimate price for crime. There were 2 main types of hangings you had to worry about. First, there was the legal hanging, sanctioned by a judge after a trial. These were supposed to be orderly, but orderly is a relative term. The condemned would be led up the steps, a black hood often placed over their head, and the noose fitted around their neck. The town marshal or sheriff would read the sentence, and sometimes, the person being executed was allowed to give their last words. These speeches could be anything from a confession or a plea for forgiveness to a final defiant curse on the town and its people. The crowd would hang on every single word. Then, there was the other kind, extrajudicial hangings. This was mob justice, pure and simple. If a group of vigilantes, or even just an angry mob, decided someone was guilty, they didn't wait for a judge. They'd find the nearest sturdy tree, toss a rope over a branch, and that was it. There was no trial, no last words, just swift, brutal execution. The line between law and lawlessness was incredibly thin, and a hanging could happen with or without the blessing of a badge. The mechanics were gruesome. The goal of a proper hanging was a quick neck snap, the long drop, but makeshift tree hangings often meant slow strangulation before a silent or cheering crowd. Coming in at number 3 is a punishment that was less about killing you and more about utterly destroying your reputation: tar and feathering. This wasn't an official legal sentence, it was pure community-driven punishment, and humiliate someone they disapproved of. Cheats, swindlers, those who violated social norms. Think of a card sharp caught dealing from the bottom of the deck, or a politician who broke his promises. The process was absolutely horrific. First, seized by a mob at night and stripped. Then, covered in hot molten pine tar. Boiling, sticky tar that caused severe third-degree burns. The pain would have been instantaneous as the tar clung to the skin. Next, the feathers. Buckets dumped on the victim. Feathers instantly adhered, creating a grotesque, bird-like costume. The person became a monstrous caricature, a public spectacle, forced to ride a sharp wooden rail. The goal, maximum humiliation. The message was clear: you're not welcome here. Imagine a traveling salesman selling fake cures. After folks get sick, he's dragged from his hotel, screams as hot tar hits his skin, laughter as feathers rain down. Finally, run out of town on a rail. Removing the tar and feathers was a nightmare, ripping skin, leaving raw, weeping wounds. Without antibiotics, infection could be a death sentence. Survivors bore permanent scars. It was a punishment designed to break a person physically and socially forever. Chapter 4. Number 4 is flogging and whipping, raw pain and public dominance. It was officially sanctioned across the frontier, not just for criminals but soldiers, sailors, prisoners, slaves, and indentured servants. The cat-o'-nine tails delivered multiple tearing cuts. sometimes with metal woven in. Chapter 5. At number 5, punishments that left a permanent mark, branding and mutilation. They marked you as criminal, outcast, or property, meant to be seen forever. A red-hot iron pressed into flesh, the smell of burning skin. Common placements: the cheek, the forehead, or the hand. A T for thief, an M for manslaughter, an A for adultery. It was a lifelong sentence of social ostracism, denied jobs, shunned by communities, treated as a permanent outcast, a cage you could never escape. Other mutilations: an ear cut off, a nose slit, or fingers amputated, swift, brutal, often by a simple knife, visible permanent marks that screamed criminal. In frontier warfare, scalping appeared across multiple groups, a trophy and terror tactic. These punishments weren't about rehabilitation, they were about ruin, no path to redemption when your crime is etched on your body. Chapter 7. If you weren't sentenced to labor or death, you faced the frontier prison or stockade. Forget modern prisons, these were makeshift, filthy, deadly. Some were sheds, others were literal holes in the ground. No separate cells, no privacy, no sanitation. A single bucket for everyone. Ovens in summer, freezers in winter. Open-air pens left you to the elements. Rain, snow, blistering sun. Disease spread fast: dysentery, typhoid, cholera. Solitary meant darkness and confinement for days or weeks, with minimal food or water. Food was atrocious, barely enough to stave off starvation, malnutrition, violence, and indifferent or cruel guards. A frontier prison was a slow-motion death sentence. For many, the only way out was in a wooden box. It was a grim testament to how brutal justice could be. Chapter 8. We've reached the end of our list: quickest, most lawless executions, summary shootings and frontier executions. Justice, at the barrel of a gun, with no ceremony and no delay. A dispute could become a death sentence in seconds. One form was the firing squad, military method or vigilante tool, a simultaneous volley, devastating and definitive. Posse killings were common, the unwritten rule: bring them back dead or alive, often dead. A cornered outlaw could surrender and still be shot, resisting arrest. Deputized citizens, chaotic shootouts. The posse, as execution squad. Famous gunfights were often summary executions. On the frontier, law was whoever drew faster. Outro, and that's it. 10 of the most brutal punishments of the American Old West. It's insane to think about, right? This is the reality behind the myths. It wasn't just about gunfights at high noon. It was a world of organized, brutal, and often public suffering designed to maintain control in a lawless land. From the slow agony of a chain gang to the instant fiery pain of a branding iron, these punishments show us a side of history that is raw and difficult to look at. But it's so important that we do. Understanding this brutality gives us a more complete, honest picture of what it took to survive and what people were capable of in the name of justice. These stories are more than gruesome facts. They represent the struggle to create order out of chaos, and the terrible price that was often paid. The line between a lawman and a killer, between a posse and a lynch mob, was terrifyingly thin. It makes you appreciate how far our legal systems have come, and reminds us of the danger when justice is left to a mob. The Wild West was a defining chapter in American history, and its legacy is written as much in brutal punishments as in heroic tales. What do you think? Which punishment shocked you most? Drop a comment, hit subscribe, and I'll see you in the next one.